Gone in seconds, how one woman escaped a kidnapper in America. It happened so fast that no one screamed, no doors slammed, no footsteps were heard. 1 second, she was outside in the early daylight, breathing in calm air. The next second, she was being dragged into a car by a stranger who had already decided her fate. Gone, just like that. The car door slammed shut, the engine started, and in less than half a minute, she was no longer visible to the street, the houses, or the quiet morning around her. She tried to open the door, locked. She tried to scream. His hand came up fast. He did not shout. He did not panic. That was the most terrifying part. Because people who panic make mistakes. People who stay calm have planned everything. As the car sped away, she realized something that made her heart race even faster. This man was not improvising. He had done this before. And if she didn't act soon, she would not survive the day. But what no one knew at that moment was this. This kidnapping would not end the way most do, because the woman in that car would make a decision that would break the entire plan. And it would start with one small mistake the kidnapper never saw coming. Hours earlier, the morning had felt normal. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels safe. No traffic, no voices, just still air and empty streets. She was young, confident, focused on her day ahead. Nothing about that morning suggested danger. This is how most abductions begin, not with chaos, but with normal life. Criminals rely on that. They rely on routine. They rely on trust. They rely on the belief that nothing bad happens in places that feel familiar. The man watching her understood this perfectly. He had been waiting, not hiding in shadows like people imagine, just watching, blending in. He knew how long it took her to move from one place to another. He knew when the street would be empty, and most importantly, he knew that no one would notice if she disappeared for a few seconds, because that is all it takes. Seconds. That is why so many abduction cases begin with no witnesses, no struggle, no sound. By the time anyone realizes something is wrong, the victim is already miles away. Inside the car, her thoughts raced faster than the speedometer. She tried to remember details, anything. The way his voice sounded, the smell inside the vehicle, the feel of the seat beneath her hands. She had heard stories like this before. Everyone had. But now she understood something most people don't until it's too late. Movies get it wrong. There is no dramatic speech, no clear moment to fight back. There is only confusion, fear, and the terrifying calm of someone who believes they are in control. He told her to stay quiet. He told her not to look at him. And then he said something that made her blood run cold. "This will be easier if you cooperate." That sentence has appeared in countless police reports across the United States. It is almost always followed by tragedy. But this story would not follow the usual path, because she was listening, learning, and waiting. The drive felt endless, even though it wasn't long. When the car finally stopped, her heart sank. They were no longer near homes, no longer near people. He took her inside a room she had never seen before, closed the door, locked it. This was the moment many victims realized the truth, that survival is no longer guaranteed. But instead of breaking down, she did something unexpected. She started talking. Not screaming, not begging, talking. She asked questions. She listened to his answers, and slowly something changed. The man began to believe he had full control, that she was calm, that she was compliant. That belief would cost him everything, because while he thought he was in charge, she was building a plan. She noticed the details, the shape of the room, the way the door opened, the sound of footsteps outside. Every second mattered. Every mistake mattered. And then, when the moment came, she did something that investigators would later describe as the turning point. She ran. Not blindly, not in panic. She waited for silence. She waited for space. And then she moved. The escape was violent, messy, desperate, but it worked. When she reached safety, Her body collapsed before her fear did, because survival doesn't end when the danger stops. It ends when you know the danger can no longer reach you.
But this was only the beginning, because what she told police next would expose a predator, not just for what he had done to her, but for what he had already done to others, and what he was planning to do again. Her escape did not just save her life, it stopped a nightmare that had been building quietly in America. And as detectives listened to her words, they realized something terrifying. If she had waited even a few more seconds, this story would have ended very differently, and the man responsible would still be free. In the next chapter, we go back to the man, back to the warning signs everyone missed, and back to the moment law enforcement realized this was not a one-time crime, because this was not his first attempt, and it would not have been his last. The first thing detectives noticed was how calm she was. Not calm in the way someone feels safe, calm in the way someone becomes when the danger is finally behind them, but the fear is still trapped inside the body. Her hands shook as she talked. Her voice did not. That contrast told investigators everything they needed to know. This was real, and this was serious. She explained how fast it happened, how there was no warning, no chance to react. One moment she was alone on a quiet street, the next she was inside a stranger's car, gone in seconds. As she spoke, detectives exchanged looks. They had heard this pattern before. Early morning, low traffic, no witnesses. The kind of crime that doesn't leave obvious clues. But then she said something that made the room change. She described details, too many details. The inside of the car, the route he took, the way he spoke. This was not a random attack. This was someone who planned. That realization pushed the case into a different category, because planned kidnappings almost never happen just once. Investigators began working backward. They retraced her morning. They examined the street where she vanished. They knocked on doors. Most neighbors said the same thing. They saw nothing, they heard nothing. But one person remembered a car, parked longer than usual, engine running, someone sitting inside. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, it meant everything. Police pulled traffic camera footage, gas station videos, any place a car like that might pass. Hours turned into days. The woman rested, but she did not sleep much. Every sound startled her. Every shadow felt too close. She replayed the escape in her head again and again. What if she had waited longer? What if she had hesitated? Those thoughts haunt many survivors. But she knew something else. She was alive, and because she was alive, she could help stop him. As investigators dug deeper, a disturbing pattern began to appear. Similar reports, near misses, women followed but not taken, calls that never turned into full cases. At the time, they looked unrelated. Now, they lined up. Same time of day, same type of street, same method. He hunted routine, and he was patient. That patience made him dangerous, but it also made him predictable. Detectives mapped the areas. They looked for overlap. One name appeared again and again in nearby reports. A man with minor offenses, nothing violent enough to raise alarms, until now. When they brought him in for questioning, he seemed relaxed, too relaxed. He answered questions politely, smiled when appropriate, denied everything. But then detectives mentioned the escape. His expression changed, just for a second. That was enough, because people who have nothing to hide do not react to details they should not know. The evidence began to stack up. Fiber matches, location data, witness descriptions. Piece by piece, the image became clear. This man did not see himself as a monster. He saw himself as careful. That belief is what allowed him to operate unnoticed, but it was also what failed him, because he underestimated one thing: the human instinct to survive.
When charges were filed, the case made headlines. People were shocked by how close it happened to home, by how fast someone could disappear. Parents replayed routines in their minds, joggers changed routes, communities grew uneasy. Because the scariest part of abduction stories is not the violence, it is the speed. The knowledge that life can change before you even realize you're in danger. The woman watched the news coverage quietly. She did not seek attention. She did not give interviews. Her focus was simple: healing. But healing is not quick. It comes in waves. Some days felt normal, others felt heavy. Still, she knew her story mattered because it proved something important. Survival is possible. Awareness matters. Seconds count. As the case moved toward trial, more information surfaced. Other victims, other attempts, moments that could have ended differently. Each new detail reinforced one truth: this was not bad luck. This was a system failure that relied on silence and routine. And it almost worked. But the trial would reveal something even darker, something investigators themselves were not prepared for. Because what they would learn next was not just about one man. It was about how many times he was closer than anyone ever knew. The courtroom was quiet when the evidence began to play. Not the kind of quiet that feels calm, the kind that feels heavy, the kind where every breath sounds too loud.
The woman sat behind the prosecutor, hands folded, eyes forward. She did not look at him. She did not need to, because she could still remember his voice, still remember the way the door closed, still remember the exact second her life split into before and after. Gone in seconds. That phrase echoed in the courtroom as the prosecutor spoke. They explained how quickly it happened, how little time there was to react, how no one nearby noticed. Jurors shifted in their seats. Many of them had done the same things she had done that morning. Walked alone, trusted the quiet, believed daylight meant safety. Then the evidence grew darker. Detectives revealed what they had uncovered after her escape. Missed reports, unconnected tips, women who felt they were being watched but couldn't explain why. Moments that seemed small at the time, moments that now looked terrifying. The man had been circling for years, not always taking, sometimes just testing, seeing who was alone, who followed routines, who trusted their surroundings. He learned from each attempt, and that made him more confident, until he chose the wrong person. When the defense tried to paint the crime as a misunderstanding, the courtroom reacted sharply. There was nothing unclear about a locked door, nothing misunderstood about force, nothing accidental about planning. Then came the part that changed everything. The survivor took the stand. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. She did not dramatize. She did not exaggerate. She spoke plainly. That honesty made every word hit harder. She described the car, the smell, the silence. She described the moment she realized no one was coming. And then she described the decision, the moment she understood that waiting meant dying. That realization, she said, was louder than fear. Jurors listened without blinking, because this was not just her story anymore. It was a warning. When the verdict came back guilty, there was no celebration, just release. A deep breath that had been held for too long. The man was led away without emotion. No outburst, no apology. That silence told its own story. After the trial, life did not return to normal. It never does, but it moved forward. The woman changed routines, changed routes, changed habits, not because she was weak, but because she was aware. Awareness is what this case left behind. Across the country, similar stories surfaced, some with escapes, some without. Each one shared the same truth. Abduction does not always look dramatic. It looks ordinary. It looks like a normal street, a normal car, a normal moment, until it isn't. Law enforcement used her case for training, for education, for prevention, because seconds matter, and knowledge saves lives. Today, her name is rarely spoken publicly. That is her choice, but her impact remains. Every time someone changes a habit, every time someone trusts their instinct, every time someone pays attention to a car that feels out of place, this case lives on. Gone in seconds is not just a title, it is a reality. And it is a reminder, because evil does not always announce itself. It waits, it watches, and it moves fast. Final outro hook. In the next chapter, we look beyond this case at other real abductions across the United States that followed the same terrifying pattern. Stories where seconds decided everything, and where not everyone got the chance to escape. The next abduction did not happen in the dark. It happened under the sun. Cars were passing. People were awake. Life was moving as normal. That is what made it terrifying. She was walking from her car toward a store. Her phone was in her hand. Her mind was somewhere else. That is when a vehicle stopped too close. The door opened. A man spoke fast, and before her brain could catch up, his hands were already on her. She was pulled inside. No one screamed. No one ran, because no one understood what they were seeing. To anyone watching, it looked like a disagreement. Maybe a couple arguing, maybe someone being helped into a car. That is how abductions survive in plain sight. They hide inside normal moments, gone in seconds. When police later reviewed the footage, they counted it. 17 seconds. That was all it took. This case happened in a different state, different city, different victim, but the pattern was the same. Fast, quiet, planned.
Investigators across the country began comparing notes, and what they found was unsettling. These were not rare events. They were connected by method, not by person. Early mornings, parking lots, side streets, routine paths. Abductors did not choose places, they chose moments. Moments when attention drops, when people feel safe, when no one is fully watching. In another case, a teenager was taken while waiting for a ride. She stood in the same spot every day. Same time, same place. Someone noticed. The car pulled up like it belonged there. She hesitated. That hesitation saved her life. She stepped back instead of forward. The car drove away. Later that day, police linked that vehicle to another attempted abduction miles away. Seconds mattered. Not all stories ended with escape. Some ended with silence. In one case, a woman vanished on her way home from work. Her car was found neatly parked, keys inside. There was no sign of struggle. That is the hardest kind of case, because there is nothing to chase, just absence. Families waited. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Some answers never came. And that is why survivors matter so much. Because when someone escapes, they bring light into a dark system. They give details, patterns, warnings. The woman from the first case knew this. That is why she agreed to educate others, quietly, privately. She spoke to small groups, law enforcement, community leaders. She did not talk about fear. She talked about seconds. She talked about instinct, about noticing what feels wrong, about trusting discomfort. Because fear comes after danger. Instinct comes before. Across the United States, awareness campaigns grew. Simple messages: change routines, stay alert, notice vehicles that don't belong. Not because the world is always dangerous, but because danger moves fast. Abductors rely on one thing more than anything else: predictability. When that disappears, their power weakens. The cases continued to surface. Different faces, same speed. Gone in seconds. Each story added weight to a truth most people don't want to face. Safety is not guaranteed by familiarity, or daylight, or quiet streets. It is protected by attention, and sometimes by luck. As Chapter 4 closes, one question remains. How many times has this almost happened? How many seconds decided a different outcome? Because for every story we hear, there are others we never will. In the final chapter, we confront the hardest part of all: the cases that ended too fast, the moments where seconds ran out, and what these real American abductions teach us
about the thin line between escape and disappearance. The cases that end quickly are the hardest to talk about, not because they are rare, but because they are final. In these cases, there is no escape story, no survivor interview, no second chance. Just a moment, and then silence. One woman left work later than usual. She took the same route she had taken hundreds of times before. The street lights were on, traffic was light. She never made it home. Her phone stopped moving less than 10 minutes later. Police found her car the next morning parked neatly near a residential area. No broken glass, no signs of struggle. Gone in seconds. Investigators believe she was taken when she slowed down, maybe at a stop sign, maybe while checking her phone, maybe while distracted for just a breath. That breath cost everything. Another case involved a child, dropped off by a bus less than a block from home. The distance was so short that no one worried. It was daylight. Neighbors were nearby.
That is when the car appeared. Witnesses later said it looked normal, clean, unremarkable. The child was gone before anyone understood what they were seeing. Searches followed, volunteers, helicopters, national attention. But seconds cannot be reversed. The truth that emerges across all these stories is painful. Abduction is not about strength or intelligence or age. It is about timing, the wrong place, the wrong second. That is why these crimes are so terrifying. They do not give warnings. They do not announce themselves. They slip into routine and steal it away. Law enforcement officials across the United States agree on one thing. Most abductions succeed because they happen faster than human reaction. By the time the brain understands danger, the body is already trapped. That is why prevention focuses on awareness, not fear. Fear freezes. Awareness acts. Survivors say the same thing again and again. They felt something was wrong before it happened. A car that slowed too much, a presence that didn't fit, a moment that felt off. Those instincts exist for a reason. The woman from the first case still thinks about the seconds she almost lost. She knows how close she came to becoming another name on a list, another face on a flyer, another story told without an ending. Instead, she became a line that changed the story, the moment where the pattern broke. Her escape did not erase the other cases, but it gave them meaning. Because every real crime story carries a lesson, and this one is simple but heavy. Seconds matter. They matter more than strength, more than planning, more than confidence. They matter because they are the only thing you may have. Gone in seconds is not just about victims. It is about time. How fast it moves, how easily it is taken, how impossible it is to get back. Across the United States, these stories continue. Different names, different streets, same speed. Some end with justice, some end with grief. But all of them leave behind the same warning. Pay attention, trust instinct, break routine when you can. Because evil does not need hours, it only needs seconds. And sometimes surviving means acting before fear catches up. The stories may end here, but the reality does not. Somewhere, another routine is forming, another quiet street, another moment that feels safe. And the only question left is this: if those seconds come for you, will you see them in time? The warning signs are never loud. They don't shout. They don't rush. They whisper. A car that slows just a little too much. A driver who takes the same turn twice. Footsteps that don't fade when they should. In this case, the warning came late. A woman noticed the vehicle behind her at a red light. It stayed close, too close. When the light changed, it followed, turn after turn. She told herself it was nothing.
That thought has ended more lives than criminals ever have. Gone in seconds. At the next intersection, the car pulled beside her. The driver smiled, spoke through the open window. Just one sentence, a distraction. That was all he needed. Witnesses later said they didn't understand what they were seeing. It happened fast, messy, confusing. By the time anyone reacted, the car was already moving. Police arrived minutes later. Minutes are too slow. Investigators learned something critical from this case. The abductor didn't use force first. He used attention. He broke focus, created confusion, then acted. That pattern appeared again and again across real U.S. abduction cases. Not brute strength, not weapons. Moments. Moments when the brain pauses. Law enforcement began teaching a new approach. Don't explain discomfort away. Don't wait for proof. Don't worry about being polite, because politeness has never saved a victim. The families left behind ask the same questions. Why didn't someone notice sooner? Why didn't anyone stop it? The answer is always the same. It didn't look like a crime. That is the most dangerous disguise of all. Survivors who escaped say something chilling. They didn't win because they were stronger. They won because they acted early, before certainty, before fear fully formed. They chose discomfort over danger. This chapter closes with a truth that law enforcement repeats quietly. If something feels wrong, time is already running out.
In the next chapter, we uncover the cases where instinct spoke loud enough, where a split-second choice changed everything, and where survival came down to acting before the moment was gone. The moment instinct speaks, there is no time to debate it. One woman felt it while loading groceries into her car, a pressure in her chest she could not explain, a feeling that someone was too close. She turned around. The man froze. That pause saved her life. She screamed, loud, uncontrolled. Not words, sound. People turned, eyes locked on the scene. The man backed away and disappeared between cars. Gone. Police later said the description matched a suspect connected to multiple attempted abductions in the area. Seconds mattered. Another survivor remembered the exact moment her body moved before her mind did. She was unlocking her door when a shadow appeared beside her. No face, no warning. Her hand dropped the keys. She ran. She did not scream at first. She ran until her lungs burned. The man chased her for only a few steps. Predators do not like attention. They do not like noise. They do not like uncertainty. He stopped. That is something movies rarely show. Most abductors are not brave. They are careful. And when careful plans break, they retreat. Across the United States, law enforcement has learned this lesson the hard way. The cases that end in survival almost always include one moment of early action. Not perfect action, not heroic action, just movement. A step away, a loud sound, a sudden change. It interrupts the script. And criminals depend on scripts. They depend on routine, on predictability, on silence. When those disappear, so does their control. Families who lost someone often say the same thing. If only one thing had been different. One turn, one pause, 1 second. But seconds do not wait. That is the cruel truth. The woman whose escape started this story understands that better than most. She knows she did not win because she was special. She won because a moment opened, and she took it. She does not live in fear now. She lives in awareness. There is a difference. Fear makes you freeze. Awareness keeps you moving. She still walks, still lives, still breathes freely. But she notices more. And noticing is powerful. Because abduction does not begin with violence. It begins with opportunity. The opportunity disappears when people pay attention. This is why these stories matter. Not to scare, but to sharpen. Gone in seconds,
is not meant to haunt you.
It is meant to wake you up, to remind you that safety is active, that instincts exist for a reason, that hesitation can be dangerous, and that survival often looks small. A scream, a step back, a refusal to be polite. These are not dramatic acts, they are human ones. As this story ends, remember this: most victims never thought it would happen to them. Most survivors never planned to be brave. They just moved when it mattered. Because in the space between normal and nightmare, there is only time, and time moves fast, gone in seconds, and sometimes saved in seconds too. If this story made you pause, that is the point. These are not rare moments. They happen quietly, in places that feel safe, to people who never saw it coming. Remember this: abduction does not begin with violence. It begins with seconds. Seconds where instinct speaks. Seconds where attention matters. Seconds that can change everything. If you found value in this story, stay with this channel. More real American true crime stories are coming. Stories that reveal patterns, mistakes, and the moments that decide who survives and who disappears. Because awareness saves lives. And the next story may begin somewhere that looks just like home.